For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Mark Taylor. How's it going today, Mark?
Doing great, Tom. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you. I know you just got back from a pretty amazing basketball game. Well, amazing for you.
Yes.
Because you guys won, you said by 30?
It was 87-57, Wake Forest over Boston College. But yeah, we were sitting courtside. My buddy had some seats down low, so we were super excited to be there.
Gotcha. And they don't give you like free student tickets?
They do, but the student tickets are a little bit up higher. And the guy was like, we got him right at half courtside. I'm like, I'm in. You don't have to put that one. But it was great game all the way around.
Awesome. Well, glad they won and sent you here happy, because it may be a completely different podcast had they lost or something. And
you're right.
So, but yeah, I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you, and talk about the new music and all the stuff you got going on. So, before we get to that, what's kind of your background? Everybody that's just meeting you for the first time, this is kind of your opportunity to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, first of all, if you're new to me, my name is Mark Taylor. Thanks so much for tuning into the podcast today. I would say, kind of my background in music, I got started from a very young age. I was playing up. My dad was in a band growing up, or when I was growing up. And I can remember very early memories of me being 5, 6, 7 years old playing guitar with his band up on stage. So I had kind of been hooked from the time I was a young kid, playing everything from old Eagles records to Queen to Doobie Brothers stuff. I kind of grew up on these really old records, and that's it. He would go play in this kind of classic rock cover band. And then fast forward, I was about, 13, 14 years old, something like that. And my dad, kept pushing me saying, I really want you to try this. If you don't like it, that's totally fine, but it seems like you have an interest. I want you to go try to do a real show. I'm like, all right, cool. So I loaded up my mom and dad's little van, took one speaker and a guitar and a microphone, and went to play at my local swim club for $50 for 4 hours. Nice. I thought $50 was $1 million when I was 13 years old, and I was on top of the world. And I never look back. So I'm 22 right now, between the ages of 12 and a half, 13 years old, till about 21. I played over 1,000 live shows all over the country and all over the world, opening up for folks like Big and Rich and Wiz Khalifa and Matt Dillon. It's taken me to some really awesome places, playing for tens of thousands of people sometimes, and sometimes playing for 2 people. It totally depends. Yeah. But it's been super fun. And then recently, with especially in the COVID pandemic, I had a chance, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, to write this record that we put out back in October, I think it was, which seems like a year ago, which is nuts. But we had 2 singles that came out on top of that. One of them, I was so fortunate to reach number 11 on the country charts with one of my singles, I'm Down. And the record's been doing super well as a whole. But yeah, that's kind of me. I'll be in Nashville full time. So I don't know if Tom had alluded to this before or not, but I'm still a college student, actually. So I am still a college student over at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So I graduate May 16th, and I'm anticipating being down in Nashville full-time starting in June. So nice. Super excited to be down there writing and playing every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So was it one of those deals where your music career started kind of taking off as you were in school, and it was like, well, let me finish this school thing? Is it?
The weird part was, it's odd because this has been a full-time job for many, many, many years. So I work about 40 hours a week before I start academic work. So it's me and a few other people on my team right now. But I mean, for the first 2.5 years of college, it was me doing everything. So everything that went out, I had to, kind of accomplish it all myself, which was hard, but I really learned a lot, which was awesome. But, my parents, they kept pushing me. They said, we really want you to finish up. We really want you to, to finish what you started there. And I couldn't agree more. I'm really excited just to, be able to graduate and put my name on that piece of paper at the end of the day in May. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a topic of conversation, I would say, amongst other people, but my whole plan's been to finish the whole time. So really fortunate that I've gotten to do this so far. And I'm really fortunate that they haven't, kicked me out of this place yet for making too much noise when I'm mixing the records up here.
Yeah. So you mix all your records yourself?
Yeah, it's a combination of folks. So I have a bunch of really phenomenal producers down there, but I do a lot of demo work for different folks as well. So I am constantly mixing up here pretty much from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. most days. So my roommates can't stand me most of the time during the daylight hours when I'm mixing up here. It has to be loud, but yeah, I do a lot of session work and demo work for folks as well. But the big records, that's someone else down in Nashville, but I do a fair amount of it up here as well.
Gotcha. I've said this to a lot of musicians, that especially ones that don't take an interest in the production end of things, that it's like it would behoove them to at least take the slightest interest in production, whether it's just learning the basics, so you know how to communicate with your producer, your engineer, like whoever's there helping you record, and something doesn't sound right, you know how to communicate with them, or say, hey, there's not enough bass in my voice, or something like that, instead of saying, hey, this doesn't sound right, and then that's all you give them.
Absolutely. And the funny part is, a lot of times it makes life so much easier in the studio. I can tell you that for a fact. I mean, just having done hundreds of sessions now, both for vocals and for guitar and some other stuff, and mixing and mastering, it just, when someone else on the other side knows what the language is, it makes so much more sense, and the project gets done 100 times faster. So, I mean, I've taken some classes in college. I'm teaching myself a bunch of different things. So it's been fun. But yes, I mean, if you're not on the production side of it, it's definitely, as Tom said, it would behoove you to do so. Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. So kind of taking a step back a little bit, so your parents were very pivotal in just kind of getting you out there. They recognized something and said, hey, give this a shot. Where did you kind of glossed over this, but who gave you your first guitar?
First guitar was my dad.
Okay.
So I remember I must have been 2 or 3 years old. I remember sitting I was born in Richmond, Virginia, moved to Ashburn, Virginia, just outside DC, and then up in Baltimore for the last 17 years, and down in North Carolina for college. But I'll never forget, one of my first memories as a kid was sitting on the fireplace at our little house in Northern Virginia. And the guitar at the time was this little cut down, half quarter size guitar, whatever it was. Yeah. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just strumming stuff up and down. My dad was playing, Eagles songs, whatever. And we'd sit there just strumming for hours and hours and hours. And I had no idea what I was doing. And if I, sounded anything like I know I did, I would have been driving my dad nuts. And I know that. But, he kept playing with me the whole time. And, it was a matter of, just trying to get me in that strumming pattern from like literally age 2 on. And then from the time I turned, 5 or 6 years old, I graduated to a bigger guitar. And on my Instagram is a picture of me when I'm like 6 years old with a full-size Fender Strat. And I literally cannot touch the end of it. So I could only play, we had to capo it up so high, I could only play a certain part of the guitar because I was so tiny. Mm-hmm. But I mean, and the cool part is I still have all those guitars. So I've made it a point to save all that stuff. There's probably, 15, 20 in the collection now, but like all of those guitars from when I was a kid, I still have, just because all the sentimental value there.
Nice. That's awesome. I can't imagine how many musicians just kind of chuck away their early instruments. And now it's just like, I mean, for me, I'm not a musician, but there's stuff that I've had when I was a little kid, like when I started doing film work and all that stuff, like all my early on cameras that I wish I still had, just because it's like, oh, we went through some stuff with that,
So 100%.
Cool. So as you were kind of going through the learning process of trying to get the strumming pattern down, do you remember a specific moment where it all started to come together or started making sense?
Yeah, I remember I was probably 8 or 9 years old at the time, end of elementary school, middle school, whatever that time was. And it was snowing outside. I had a snow day and it was Baltimore, snowy mess, couldn't move anywhere. And we were watching, I'll never forget, it was like a Villanova Marquette basketball game. A lot of my stories about basketball. And it's like January, whatever, we're sitting there watching this game on TV. And my dad and I are sitting on the floor together, whatever. He's playing guitar. I said, I want you to teach me that. And he was like, oh, it's really hard. It was Hotel California. And he said, it's a really hard one. He said, I don't know if we can do this just yet. We can try it. And we sat there for hours and he taught me everything about that song, what a bar chord was, all these different things. I've been taking lessons for a little while by that point. So I had a general understanding of what was going on. But we sat there, and I'll never forget kind of like having him sing and playing along to it. And this just in my mind going, this is cool. I like this. I can, and then the wheels start turning. You want to start singing and playing guitar. And then, then you try to figure out what songs you can actually sing. It was a really cool moment, but that was definitely that kind of turning point. I remember just sitting in our living room on the floor, just playing Hotel California for hours and hours. And I probably stunk. I can promise you I stunk, but he stuck. He made me stick with it, and it was great. And I'm so appreciative of that.
Nice. And then so you started like learning how to play guitar first. At what point did you start writing your own music and picking up the singing aspect of things?
Yeah. So you can ask my parents. I'll testify to this. I don't keep my mouth shut. So singing was kind of a natural progression for that, because it was a time when I could be louder than everyone else and no one could talk over me. So that was probably point one for me trying to learn to sing. But I had always been a singer since I was a little kid, singing just every chance I could. There are videos, again, of me on the fireplace. I put on these shows, and I'd make everyone sit there for just hours and hours and have me sing gibberish and nonsense. And they'd all sit there and go, oh, okay, cool, whatever, trying to get at it. But always been a singer, always loved singing. The songwriting piece, though, came a lot later. So I was always, as a kid, I would write some songs. I remember second, third grade trying to write my first couple songs, and it was hard, obviously, because when you're, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, even up till you're, 14, 15 years old, sometimes, it's hard to try to put the human condition in a song. Yeah. And that's what the really good songs come from. I look back now, I'm like, what in God's name was I writing back then? This is terrible. But, you got to, Ed Sheeran said the quote once, every time you write a song, it's like turning on the tap water after you go away from your house for like 2 weeks. Yeah. The stuff that comes out as first looks terrible, and then you can start drinking the water and it gets better. So everyone kind of has to go through that natural progression. But I really seriously picked up writing probably 17, 18 years old, which is honestly late for a lot of the people I'm working in Nashville with right now. So it was kind of hit or miss before that. But since kind of the college days, especially, it's been a lot more intense, a lot more. I can tell you right now, we're doing 2 or 3 co-writes a week now down in Nashville, just with people, but trying to get those creative juices flowing and, see who wants to cut a song. But yeah, I mean, it not as early as the guitar stuff for the songwriting. I'll be honest with you. Kind of came later.
Are you doing virtual co-writes then, or are you actually going down to Nashville on a weekly basis?
So both. So I go down for about a week a month.
Okay.
So I pick, and it varies a little bit just off of, I'm still in school. So, I have to go to class sometimes. But it totally depends. A lot of my writers are so gracious, and they're more than willing to get on Zoom with me for hours at a time and just do that. Yeah. The first one I usually like to have in person, just to kind of figure out if it's going to work or not. It's really hard to do it over Zoom if you've never met the person before. Yeah. So most of my first co-writes with new folks are in Nashville, or even, I have tremendous writers in Baltimore. I have tremendous writers in California, wherever. So it just kind of depends where they are. I'd like to meet up the first time. And then after that, if it's going well, we want to continue, we can go on Zoom after that. But a lot's on Zoom right now, and it's gotten a lot easier. The in-person connection is still a thing. Yeah. I'll be honest, I try to write in person whenever I can, but Zoom's made it quite accessible, and it's made my songwriting better because you have to communicate ideas a lot more clearly, especially with a lot of these geniuses that I'm working with right now. If my ideas are not articulating correctly, it's not going to come across to them, and they're not going to want it in the song. So it's a lot of trying to just be as clear as possible and as concise as possible, which has been really tremendous for my writing.
Awesome. And with all the early on, it seems like you had a lot of influences of classic rock and just like rock in general. Where did you kind of transition over into the country side of things, or has country always been there?
It's always been there. When I was a kid, I stole my grandmother's Alan Jackson CD from her car. So that kind of always stuck with me, because that was the one, back when CDs were a thing. That was kind of the one CD that I had kind of with me at all times. I would always have it in my room, whatever. And I had it was a little like speaker, and I could put it in there, and that was like my thing. But the thing is, like, I grew up playing a ton of like old Led Zeppelin stuff, Beatles stuff, the Eagles, Bon Jovi, like stuff, like harder stuff, not necessarily country music. And I'll tell you right now, in high school, I was in a touring rock band back then, and it was a lot of like Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Allman Brothers and like funk rock and some psychedelic stuff. So like it was totally not country at all, like not even a little bit. And after a while kind of doing that, we were playing some phenomenal venues. We were playing the Auto Bar up in Baltimore, which is the top 10 venue in America, Ram's Head Live, which was a 5,000 person venue. We were playing the 8x10 Club in Baltimore. So we were playing out a lot at these really big venues, opening for some of these bands. And, after a while, I was just like, it's fun and I love this music and it's great and it always will be special in my heart. But I was like, I want to sing country music. I love this stuff. I want to write this stuff and I want to be doing this for the rest of my life. So that's kind of after high school is kind of when that switch right there, because then they all went to a different school. I went to Wake, obviously. And, I was able to, think about what I wanted to do outside of that, I had been gigging, kind of doing my own thing for a while before that, but the country stuff really started to kick in really into overdrive end of high school, I would say.
Gotcha. So do you ever see a world or a timeline where like 5-10 years down the road after you've been doing the country thing a while, you revisit some of your rock roots?
Yeah, the cool part is like if you go back and listen to that record, which shameless plug, folks, if you want to go listen to my new record, please go do. Yep. There are some songs on there that are straight out of Metallica influences, Maroon 5 influences. Like it's a mixed bag of stuff. Like there is a song on there called Another Day that is straight off of a rock record. It is Les Pauls in full gear, just grinding as hard as they can on this song, and because that's what I love to do. For me, my genre is not necessarily fully country. It's not fully pop, and it's not fully rock, but it's a mix of all of them. Oh yeah. So I like to say I brought classic rock up 30 years to meet country music with a little bit of pop in there. So I like to bring all these different things in. And I mean, if you ask, especially from a studio point of view, I'm a nerd for like all the old analog stuff. I like everything to sound like it's from the 70s. I love that kind of old tube crunch to it. And I put a lot of that in the music, and that's very much on purpose because I think it sounds the best. And I love, for me, like that was what the Eagles did minus the pop stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I would go, and I was lucky enough to see Glenn Frey and the Eagles before Glenn passed away, but like going to see the Eagles for me was like, it was classic rock with country. And then I saw them in like 2015, 2016, and they threw a little bit of pop and stuff in there. And I was like, that is it. That's what I want. I'm doing that. And that concert truly kind of shaped the way I'm viewing all my music right now. And it's different from what most people are doing, which I like, because it's not 100% country. And there's a lot of kind of that old school stuff that's been brought up for the last 30 years too.
Nice. So you brought up the new album, One, which is out now on Spotify.
Get it.
And you brought up liking the sound of analog. So is the album available on vinyl?
It is not. It is currently, I wish it was. Something we're looking at. We've been looking at it for a little while. Yeah. Little old independent artist me. It's very expensive to do vinyl. Oh, yes. It's extremely expensive to do vinyl. Even CDs was a little bit of a push just because, people are streaming everything right now, and it's super easy. But, I looked at cutting vinyls one time and I was like, oh my God, that's a fee not a lot of people are going to be willing to pay for a record.
That's the thing is when I go out to shows, like I don't have a CD player anymore. I just had to upgrade my car and it doesn't even have a CD player in there. And I'm like, all right, so now I got all these demo CDs that bands send me all the time that I can't even do anything with because I don't have any place to play them. And so now when I go out to shows, I just buy vinyl, and it's like, well, assuming that they have it, but like you said, it's so expensive, and they're paying X amount, which leaves you to pay. I've seen it like $30 for a full length album.
They're not making much, and they're not making much off of that at all. That's the thing. It's like I love vinyl. I would love to have it, but the cost is just. Excuse me, it's a way up in the air.
Oh yeah, unless you're in a situation where you can afford to print thousands of them or tens of thousands of them, then you can get the cost down. But at this point where you're only looking to press 1,000, it's like, yeah. So anyways, so One out now. What's kind of the story behind this album?
My family was driving me nuts during COVID, and I wanted to go in my room and write an album. We had been toying with this idea for a while, my team and I, and this was a kind of a big thing too, because I had gone from playing some original songs out, mostly kind of cover tunes, and There came that time in COVID when everyone had that like self-introspective moment of like, I want to do this with my life. And everyone had, I'm sure, that moment at some point. Yeah. And I sat there, I was like, I got something to say. And I want to, there's stuff I want to say. There's music I want to write. And I'm not hearing it on the radio right now. And I want to do this. So in a matter of a few months, most of it was written. Ironically, both of the singles that came off that record were the two last songs, and they were both written in under 25 minutes apiece. So total, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, but total last minute additions to one. But yeah, I mean, it was truly a product of circumstance with COVID. Me just I was taking an internship in college, and there were just times when I would get off work and just be like, I want to go, say what I'm feeling in a different way. And for me, that's writing music, and I loved writing it. It was super fun. And yeah, I mean, it ended up being, I want to say 10 songs. I believe it was 10 songs off the record, or 9 songs, something like that. We wrote a ton more. I had a few co-writers on that album as well. A lot of it's just me though, which is kind of cool, because a lot of stuff now is, I mean, I can't name a single country song that's been super popular in the last, decade that's had one writer on it. Every once in a while, they're like odd birds. They kind of come out of nowhere every once in a while, but there's not a ton of those. So for me to kind of do a lot of this and receive some success with it too was really gratifying and really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is something that I've taken an interest in a lot. And you just kind of mentioned it about how there was a lot of songs that didn't make the album. How do you go through the song selection process?
It's hard because I obviously, having been a part of every song on this album, I'm sitting there going, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, whatever. And it's hard. I mean, that to me was the hardest thing, not the production side of it, not the writing, it's picking the actual songs is the hardest part. For me, it was just a lot of how I thought the arc of the album was going to go. So I wanted to kind of check boxes intentionally with this. So I wanted a bunch of, straight country songs. I wanted just really songs that could be played on country radio today and had a really solid message and were really fun and singable. So I had a couple songs like Buzzed on a Boat and I'm Down, which are the two singles. Those are made for country radio. Those are singable. They are there for the concerts when, we're trying to get everyone clapping in the back and, having a beer, doing whatever. Those are for that. You have songs like No More and Another Day, which are basically off of a rock record, which is cool. And I really wanted kind of a heavier side to this, because you get a lot of albums that come out now that are very acoustic guitar and there's not a lot of grit behind them, which is fine. That's just not what I wanted to do. So I wanted to have a little bit of grit and mud behind this thing. So I threw a couple of the rock songs on there. And then we had a couple songs that I just loved writing. I mean, for me, I can tell you what's going to be an album cut and what's not most of the time. There's always those 3 or 4 at the end that kind of drive me nuts because they could go either way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of just boxes I'm looking to check. And especially now that I get more into the, working with different people side of it and it getting a little bit more serious and on a much broader scale, that obviously gets harder because everything that I think is coming out of this is like, oh my God, that's going to be a single. That's going to be a single, whatever. So the songs we're writing right now, I'm sitting here going, oh my God, what am I going to cut and what am I not going to cut? But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the connection and a lot of just those boxes, like I was saying, checked on a record.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Now, when you're kind of laying it all out, do you try and, as far as like laying it on the track list, is it more to try and tell a story, or is it more of, oh, this song leads into this song better? How do you kind of lay it out on the track list?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks kind of go the story-ish route, if you will. I'm more of the kind of segues into things. So I like to have, again, like I talked about, there's different musical qualities of the different songs. So like the first song on there is I'm Down because I kind of, that's a really kind of punchy one that everyone's going to hopefully vibe to right away. Yeah. And then through there, I like to just kind of, it's like baking a cake, right? Yeah. You want to have a really solid foundation, which is why you see a lot of singles as the first or the last song or right in the middle. So like that's very intentional, right? Because you want to kind of bake that cake. You want to have a really solid foundation. You sprinkle in a couple other things. Then at the end, I wanted to send it home with those kind of gritty rock songs. So the beginning and the end were extremely intentional. The rest of it, I was kind of like, these could kind of fall anywhere. And I placed them kind of not in favorited way, if you will. Like, to me, there was more of just this song led into this song more in the South. Yes, definitely punchy opening and a really punchy ending too was what I was looking for with that one.
Awesome. Makes sense. Complete sense. So now I'm going to ask you to pick a favorite child. What is your favorite song off this album to perform live?
Oh, they're going to yell at me. Don't make me do this.
To perform live. I'm not asking you what your favorite.
Sure. To perform live and my favorite song on the album and to perform live are two different things. So I would say performing live is Buzzed on a Boat.
Okay.
Which has been a crowd favorite since I wrote it, it's just so much fun because it started as a joke. I wrote that song. My sister and my mom had been bothering me saying, you need to write a song called Buzzed on a Boat. No one's done it yet, whatever. And we're in the middle of COVID and quarantine in my house. Like, you guys are driving me nuts. Stop it. And then finally we had gone away to see my grandparents in Florida in like December or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we're sitting on a beach and my sister goes, so I guess you're not talented enough to write it, huh? And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm writing it right now. 15 minutes without a guitar, sitting on a beach. I had literally nothing, not a piano, nothing. I sat there. I said, this is the melody. I wrote out the lyrics. I said, don't ask me about this again. And we're sitting in a production meeting later in probably February or March. I'm scrolling through my phone for last minute ideas for a song. And I'm like, what is Buzzed on a Boat? Are you kidding me? And we got this thing and I played what I had written. And I was like, when did I do this? And my sister reminded me later. I was like, oh my God, I remember that. Sent it over to my producer. He was like, we need to put this out on the record. It needs to be the first single. I was like, okay. So we get it all produced in like a week and a half. And it ended up being the first single. So it went from pretty much concept to production in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah. So we had released that like around May or something like that. So it was a really tight turnaround to put that first single out there. But the funny thing is, my roommates had heard it a lot because I'd been using it in the studio and stuff like that. So I ended up, because they bothered me for so long, I ended up sending them a copy of it. Yeah. And actually ended up getting leaked around the entire student body of Wake, which was hilarious. So people streaming it on their phones or whatever. I'm hearing my song everywhere. I'm like, what's going on? This isn't out yet. Like, are you kidding me? So I would show up to places, the song would be playing, stuff like that. So it kind of came out to this kind of awesome marketing push that my friend group inadvertently kind of created by accident. And that made it really fun because everyone knew all the words when it came out, and I'd go play it and everyone would jam along to it and raise the beers at the same time. And like, it became this really kind of fun, end of year college anthem for a lot of people, which was super fun. And it's so much fun to sing live. My favorite song on the album, though, I'd say is I'm Down, just because it's done the best. And to me, that was super fun to write because that was, again, concept of, I want to write a love song from a college guy's perspective to the song was done in about 25, 30 minutes. And same thing right after Buzzed on a Boat, sent it over to the producer. He's like, all right, we're going to do this one too. It's like, just wrote this one, see what you think. We ended up putting it out, and Nicole, my publicist, kind of sat down. She was like, yeah, this is going to be single too. I was like, okay, cool. And we put it out, and that one jumped up the charts in about 10 weeks. We went from uncharted to number 11, which was awesome and unbelievable, and received a lot of radio play for that one. So it was just super cool. But those probably are my top two on the album.
Gotcha. Perfect. So I'm Down and Buzzed on the Boat had seemed to be like the two definite singles from the moment that you presented them to be a part of the album till the moment they were released. Was there a third song on there that you were trying to push as a single, or was it just? Yeah,
it's funny you said that because there actually was. There's a song called Right There on the album. The issue is with that one, so we presented it as a single and we pitched it to a bunch of people. It's super slow. It's one of, honest to God, that was my favorite song to probably write on the album, just because the emotions in it I think are really pretty, and I really love the chords and the music theory behind it that went into it. It was some of my favorite kind of crafting I have done on a song in a long time. We pitched it to radio, we pitched it to all the DSPs and stuff like that, and it was too slow. And that's the thing that kind of came back to bite us on that one. Was I love the song and the people I was showing it to love the song, but it's a super slow one. And ballads typically don't do well as singles, which is interesting. So a lot of ballads, especially when you follow it up with, kind of Buzzed on a Boat and I'm Down, which was super quick. It just didn't do as well. It did fine. It just didn't do as well as the others, but that was probably my third one on the album. We kind of pitched it as a third, and then when it didn't do as hot with charts and radio stuff like that, we just kind of stopped pushing it at that point. But
okay,
I'm being completely honest, that's what kind of happened with that song.
Gotcha. Well, because as I'm looking at your like Spotify playlist, it shows like the ones that have significant amount of streams. And as you brought that one up, I saw that was one of the other songs. I was like, if I ask this question, I guarantee you this is what he's going to say. But
Yes,
let's
you're
see.
correct. You are absolutely correct. But yeah, I mean that song was super enjoyable to write, and that was really, it was the first time I kind of really let loose and let myself really put what I wanted to say on pen and paper. Because a lot of times, especially in commercial country music, we do it every day. We have to write kind of towards artists and towards radio. So there's a little bit of a shift, and obviously the good guys, the really, really good guys, can really say what they want to say and still write kind of that in that pattern. Yeah. But that was one for me that was really like, this is for me, and I want this to be on the album, but this is a song for me. It's not necessarily for radio. The other two are kind of built for radio with that structure, but that one was for me, which I really love. So that's always one that I like to toss in the set. As you may not have heard it on the radio, you may not have heard it before, but it's one for me that was super special.
And it's a nice tempo change too. Like it's one of those songs where if you need like a moment for everybody to kind of cool down before you pick it right back up, you could throw that one in there, maybe another song, but just it's like that nice chill down moment before it picks right back up. Like if we're talking in the grand scheme of like performing live and stuff.
Absolutely. And it's a cool moment because, and I was literally just at the Bluebird Cafe not 5 days ago, and that was something that Brett Young,
low-key flex.
Well, another low-key flex. So this was funny. So Brett Young and I were talking for a while after the show, and we're hanging out, and we had been talking about there was a song he did. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but I just literally heard it 20 minutes ago. But he said, this song never got to radio. He wanted to push it as a single, but it's one of the favorites he had ever written before, and it's beautiful. And it's the same thing. It's not really structured for radio in that way, but you can tell that was one that he really just poured everything out, and it's really beautiful. But yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. That's I just like before I even started doing the podcast like full time, I never knew what the Bluebird Cafe was. And then I had a few people bring it up.
Sure.
And I had asked somebody that I had a little bit of a relationship. Like, it's like, hey, so what's the deal with the Bluebird Cafe? And they're like, oh my God, you don't know about the Bluebird Cafe. So I'm like, I've been to Nashville once.
You got to go far.
Yeah.
You have to go. I mean, have you been since that conversation? Let me ask you that.
I have not been to Bluebird because I've been to Nashville twice now because when I talked to him originally, I'd only been once. I've been twice now. And the only time we had free was a Monday morning.
Yeah.
And it was like, we ended up going to Ryman. Like we walked around. Yeah.
All right. You can do that too. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Bluebird's unbelievable. I mean, we were sitting there, and it was Brett Young, Chris DiStefano, and JT Harding, who probably have 60 number ones between all three of them. And it was 2 hours of the most beautiful music. I mean, and they're playing songs that they wrote. All of them are just playing number one after number one after number one. It's unbelievable. I mean, it blows you away. I took one of my buddies down there last week, and he sat there. He was like, "This is the coolest musical experience of my life," and I was like, "I cannot agree more." But I highly recommend the Bluebird. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, you get to go hang out with all these different people, and they're literally 6 feet from you. I mean, it holds no more than 75 people. Yeah. The room is the size of a college dorm room, so you got to fit all in the same room. And there's a bar in the back, which makes it even more complicated. But cannot recommend it enough.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the hope is. I was telling somebody that lives down in Nashville right now, the hope is I see myself actually relocating to Nashville within the next 2 years. It'll probably be within the next year, but 2 years, awesome. It just to kind of give myself that like grace period. So, there you go. Because my sister lives in central Indiana. My dad lives in South Florida. And they're like, oh, well, you got to stop because I keep wanting to move west. And they're like, no, you got to come back. And I was like, well, if I do, I'm going to go to Nashville. And they're like,
there you go.
My dad gets it. My sister doesn't quite get it. I'm like, well, I have an F5 would thrive in Nashville. I wouldn't even have to try. It would be
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You walk down the street and you can get anyone and their mother, I can guarantee you, has at least a cut on someone's famous album. I can tell you that right now in Nashville.
Yeah.
But
So
awesome. I hope to see you down there. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's the thing we're working on. So cool. The album one's out now. What are you working on for 2022? What's kind of the plan going into the new year?
So it's exciting stuff. So like I said, I'll be relocating down to Nashville in June, which is kind of a big move, trying to figure out logistics of all that stuff and, living situations and, how all that stuff's going to work. But right now it's a lot of writing. Like I said, I'm doing, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 writes a week, just trying to get the creative juices flowing. We're talking with a lot of different music executives right now to kind of see what the next steps are going to look like. There may or may not be an acoustic single of a song. In a couple of weeks, we'll see. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. Just a little bit of a teaser for all the fans out there. I don't know. We'll have to see. But there might be something on the horizon in a couple of weeks here. But
okay.
Yeah, fun stuff.
Very cryptic, but I'm enjoying it.
Very cryptic, yes. We'll have to see. Nothing's been announced yet, so I obviously don't know anything. But there's some cool stuff in the works. I promise you that much. But just looking forward to it's going to be a big change of scenery when I get down to Nashville. Just trying to get ingrained in the community and trying to, write and, put food on the table and play and pay rent and stuff like that. That's all. They're all important things. So I'm gonna do my darndest and my best to do all of those things when I get down there. But yeah, middle of June, beginning of June is going to be kind of the anticipated arrival date down there, and then we're just going to hit the ground running as soon as I get there.
Nice. Awesome. So since you're actively writing and kind of always writing, what is a co-write session like with Mark Taylor, or just a writing session in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So what a lot of us will do, most writing sessions start with at least 20 to 30 minutes of just banter back and forth. And honest to God, that's where the best song ideas come from. I have come in and I'll prepare tracks sometimes. I'll come in with an idea that I want to write about. Other co-writers come in. And then, you could sit there and talk for 20 minutes and all of a sudden you're writing a totally different song than you thought you were. So I kind of like to start just with, hey, how are you? What's going on in your life? And the cool part is I get to write with a lot of really talented folks. My writers are some of the most talented people in the world, my co-writers. I just absolutely love working with them. So it's cool because we're all kind of doing it together. There's some folks that are directly my age. There's some folks that are 60 years old, 70 years old, 40 years old, 30 years old, whatever. So it's kind of, we're all from different walks of life all over the place. And everyone's been fairly successful at what they've been doing, which is really cool. So drawing off of experiences from folks is a huge thing for me. I love to kind of talk about how different folks have done things and, how'd you get this song on this record? Like, how'd you get this cut? Whatever. How do you meet these people? And I love having those conversations. And that's usually the first 20, 30 minutes or whatever. And then I'm a kind of more of the music guy, I would say. So it kind of starts with, me sitting here with a guitar, just kind of strumming a few things back and forth, and the other writers are doing the same. And if someone plays something someone else likes, you run with that for a little bit. You figure out what you want to say. You start with a hook usually. So the song that went number 1 today, By Dirt, which is, I think, one of the best lyrical songs in a very long time. If you listen to that, obviously the hook is By Dirt there, but it's talking like there's way more to that song, and go listen to that song if you haven't already. But the lyrics there are so cool, and they lead up to this big hook of By Dirt. But the whole thing that I've been pushing everyone to do, and the writers have been pushing me to do recently, is write that kind of song where you can have that really catchy hook, then you can bring in all these really cool experiences and explain something familiar in a different way. So we'll spend a lot of time kind of talking about that and diving into what we want our hook to be and how we want the song to sound. And, if it's a super upbeat song that's, 100% ready to be, danced to, or if you're writing a kind of a slower ballad that is, more introspective, stuff like that, we'll talk about that. And then it's just writing. That's the easy part. Once you kind of get all that down, then it becomes kind of like clockwork, and that's when the muscle memory kicks in. So doing all these writes, it gets easier and easier with every time you go around to say, okay, let's go here with this chord. Let's move this instrument over here. Let's say this and this lyric. And the lyrics become to flow a little bit easier, which is kind of cool. But yeah. And then after that, one of us will we'll take a couple days. Yeah. And then after that, we'll kind of say, hey, do you want to change anything? Do you like the song? What's been going on in your mind? Most of the time, there's a few tweaks here or there. I'm a terrible speller, and my grammar was horrendous, which is hilarious. So we'll go back and okay, you misspelled 18 words in here. You need to say this instead of this, and then, and that kind of. So you'll go back and tweak it a little bit. And then I might sit down and I might demo it here. We might send it off to some of our demo producers. We might have another external person come in. Maybe there was someone demoing in the room. You never know. So then it gets a little more complicated after that. And then, it goes up in the air after that. And hopefully either I'm going to cut it or someone I know is going to cut it, or we're going to get someone famous to cut it. So that's the hope with most of them. But yeah, it's not a super overly complicated process. Anyone can do it. That's the thing that everyone's been kind of asking recently is I'd love to do that one day. It's you absolutely can. It's not hard. The really good guys, the Shane McAnallys and the Ashley Gorleys and the, all the phenomenal writers that are out there in Nashville right now. They have a certain formula they follow, and they can do this at the flip of a light switch. They can turn it on and off, and they're phenomenal at it. So you're not going to start as the Shane McAnally of the world, but
no, not at all.
Exactly. Yeah. But you can write a good song, and that means a lot to you. And that's the cool thing is every song's a way of expressing things. And a lot of times when I bring something into the room, when a writer brings something into the room, it's about a real life experience. So they tell that story. And the thing I always ask for is what I try to sit down and do is I'm trying to direct the script in front of me. I'm trying to sit here and direct the music video. So if we're we were writing last night, I was okay, we're at a gas station. What gas station are we at? What kind of car is this girl driving? How does she look? What's going on in this? What's the weather like outside? I'm literally directing this music video in my head, because for me, that makes it so much easier to tell the story if I can see the story in front of me and watch it. So, it's not rocket science. You can totally do it, but that's it. It's fun. I love the writing side of it, and that I didn't know I'd love it this much when I got really kind of in the Nashville community, but absolutely love it. Would not trade it for the world. Absolutely.
And I mean, it's important to have that creative outlet, especially when you're performing. You also I just live in this world where if you're going to play music, you should also write music instead of just, I don't know, that's the weird world I live in. But
absolutely. And it's for a lot of folks, that's like you were saying, it's a way of self-expression. It's a creative outlet, which is super cool. So, and there's not many careers that you can do that in. So I think I'm very lucky to be in this one.
Yep, absolutely. So just kind of stepping away from music for a little bit, when you need some time to yourself to escape from the pressures of school or the dozens of co-writes you do a month, what are some of your hobbies besides going to college basketball games?
Yeah, sure. I'm a big golfer.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time on the golf course, more time than I probably like to admit. But I love playing golf. Another thing my dad and I, he kind of showed me how to do at a young age. Played all throughout high school. I'm not playing at Wake, but I just like to have a good time and go out with some friends. And most Saturday mornings we have a standing tee time somewhere, so we'll go out and go try to play and get a couple of us together, one or two groups, and just go have a good time, enjoy each other's company, and try to shoot as low as we can. Which the latter never really happens, but we have a great time together, and it's fun. Golf's a huge one. I love the beach. I'm a total beach bum. If I'm there, I'm not coming off till sunset. So, that's a general understanding. As I go down, I don't come off the beach until I have to, until it's dark. I mean, that's kind of what I like to do. And honestly, and it sounds kind of cliche, but for me, just sitting down and just getting my fingers on a guitar, that's therapy enough for me. I mean, that's so relaxing to me. It's like a second nature. I love it. I mean, that to me is like breathing. I can just kind of sit down and play something, whether it's my song or not. Honestly, when I'm trying to relax, I don't like playing my music because then I start thinking about it. So I'll play whatever covers in my head at that time, and we'll sit there and kind of play a little bit for 20, 25 minutes or whatever, and then go back to what I was doing. But yeah, between those three things and school and writing and, all the different things happening in Nashville right now, it's not a busy life at all. Not at all.
No, not at all. I think you need more stuff.
I think so. I think you're right. Absolutely.
No, but it's interesting that you brought up that when you get away, you still like to break out the guitar every once in a while. Cause I think it all goes down to the context of the situation where just sitting there and strumming the guitar, it's almost therapeutic in a way. Whereas if you're in a professional, we'll call it a professional setting where you're actively writing to further your career, that's a completely different mindset you got to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So like if you're just sitting there and strumming on the guitar, you're not even thinking about what you're playing. You're just putting your, I don't want to say ADD at rest, but just kind of, exercising the muscle memory almost.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that for me is, I can do that in my sleep. But that for me is just, it's relaxing and it's really cool. I love it.
Yep, absolutely. But I don't want to keep you too much longer here. So one thing that we have to do before we leave is we like to pass on knowledge to the younger musicians out there that are ready to take that first step, that next step, that, whatever it is. So from everything you've learned over the last several years of your career, what's a piece of advice or something that you've learned that you think would really behoove the next generation of musicians?
Keep going. This is one of the hardest careers to get into. It is one of the only careers that, I'll take sales, for example. If the top sales, or if you want to be the top salesman at your company, you could pull that top salesman in currently and interview them and ask them questions, take them to lunch or whatever. If I want to go talk to Luke Combs, that's a lot harder, especially, from a little independent artist in North Carolina here, right? So like that, I can't just, look up what is Luke Combs' phone number on Google or send him an email, stuff like that. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So it's hard. And that's the thing is like, there's not a lot of guidance, it's a big challenge in the industry. And it's something I'd love to change if I'm able to, because there's not enough people right now sitting down to talk to these younger artists about, hey, don't sign everything away. Hey, you can do some of this yourself. You don't need 100 people on your roster right now. You can do a lot of this, right?
Yeah.
Because people get to Nashville and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm going to sign every single contract that comes my way. I don't need an attorney. I don't need any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Keep going. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's hard. No one has said this industry is easy. I think it's one of the hardest industries, period, with, it's crazy. I mean, there are so many talented people who will never make it. And that's the very sad reality, is that there's a million people out there who are probably better than I am, better than whoever's listening to this, and they won't make it. But you could be that one. And, if you give it the shot, and especially like for me, the big reason for this kind of happening soon is that, I'm graduating college at 22. I can take a couple of years, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. I can go do something else after that. Because it's a lot harder to do it when you're 40, 50 years old and you have things tying you down, right? So if you can do it now, like the best time is now. You can't go back and do it yesterday. Just go do it and do it now and stick to your guns and trust yourself, because you're probably right. That's kind of the knowledge I would pass along there.
You've been watching a lot of Gary Vee, haven't you?
Yes, actually I have, which is awesome. Absolutely. I love Gary Vee. Yes.
Yeah. Because it's so funny. About 2 Christmases ago, I had a kid reach out to me. He was like, and we'll kind of end it on this, but I had a kid reach out to me. He was 17 going on 18. It was like right around Christmas. He was getting ready to graduate high school. He's like, hey man, I'm a musician. I've been kind of fiddling around writing my own stuff for about a year now, and I really want to give this a go. What advice do you have for me? I was like, okay, let me ask you a couple not qualifying questions, but a couple questions. What are your expectations? And he gave me his answer. And then I was asked him, his expectations were that he just wanted to play music and see if he could make a go at it. I'm like, okay, that's fair. Yeah. And then I was like, what responsibilities do you have right now? As far as financial, like, do you have a family that's depending on you? Like, you're 17, you shouldn't have a family depending on you, but I know, there are different situations for different people. He's like, no, basically I just got to cover my car insurance and a phone bill, and that's pretty much it. I'm like, cool. So here's what you do. You've got 6 months till you graduate, roughly. Go get a job, save every penny you can. Then the day you graduate, find the first open mic, drive to it, perform. If you make money, cool. If you don't, cool. And just keep going till you get to where you want to be, or you run out of money.
Exactly right.
And he was like, really? You think that'll work? And I was like, yeah, you just got to be willing to pay and play in front of nobody. Like, essentially just play it smart, have a bankroll, and then just go. And if you keep making money, you can keep going. So
100. And I cannot stress that. I mean, that is such good advice. I mean, literally, I have played for thousands and I have literally played for no one. I mean, there even shows last year. I mean, this is after a year of having a song that charted at number 11. Mm-hmm. I was still sometimes playing for no one because people weren't in the bar, and that's fine. But that's what happens. Yeah. I can guarantee you, ask any celebrity right now that's playing country music for a living, they have played to no one before. Yeah. But it humbles you and it makes you so much stronger, which I love. Because the time and the one last thing I'll say on this too is advice for the music industry: don't let the highs get too high and the lows get too low. Yep. You let the highs get too high, you'll screw yourself over. And if the lows get too low, you'll stop. You got to always kind of find that middle ground. Not here, but find that middle ground right there. Yeah. And
always stay authentic to who you are. Absolutely. That authenticity is going to carry you much further than talent, anything,
Absolutely. 100% agree, Tom. 100%.
But yeah, really appreciate you talking to me. For anybody that wants to check out the album, any shows, do you have shows on the schedule right now, or is that just kind of?
Yeah, shows are on the schedule up until I want to say April, something like that. Okay. But if I'll plug the website if that's okay.
Yeah, if anybody wants to check out any of that stuff, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can go to www.marktaylorofficial.net. One more time, www.marktaylorofficial.net. You can find me on Instagram at mark_acoustic. Again, that's mark_acoustic on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook on this page if you're listening on Facebook right now, at Mark Taylor Official Music, and you can find all of my original music on Apple Music, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and radio stations all across the country.
Awesome. Well, once again, Mark, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me. It's been an absolute blast. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to do this again. It was really exciting, and maybe it'll be down in Nashville. Who the heck knows anymore?
I'm in, man.
Awesome. Once again, thank you so much for chatting. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you all later.